launching a series of talks at the downtown studio of UCCS. That talk is entitled Learning How to Look. A variety of topics on art and architecture are explored by a group of lifelong learners such as yourselves. So please welcome Chuck Benson.
Thank you. I know we're starting a little bit late today, but if I've done my job right, at the end of this, you'll have been inundated with images of the Godhead from all different kinds of world religions and impressions and reflections. And I'll go into this a little bit more, but the Godhead is not allowed to be shown in Islam, okay? And for that matter, in Judaism, it's we're pretty big on the old guy on the old man with the white beard on the white throne in Christianity. But I think I'm just going to jump in, and we'll start with Judaism, and we're going to start with something that is sacred to Judaism, which is called the Tetragrammaton, which reads from right to left as Yahweh or Yahweh. Okay, and just that symbol itself is sacred and representative across the sands of time. Is everything here clear? We're not getting too much bounce off the southern light. We're pretty good. Maybe we should turn down the. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah. Great. So we're talking about a tradition that's 5,000 years old with Judaism and the development of what's called the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And this is, again, Yahweh, but this is a little bit different. This is the active interpretation from the ancient Hebrew text of I am that I am, okay, which we'll remember was being barked out by Cecil B. DeVille in the movie The Ten Commandments, right? This is in mobility. Remember, the Jews, the Hebrews, leave Egypt and they go into the Sinai and they build graven images, and so God gets pissed. He says, you're going to wander 40 years before all the generations that misbehaved are gone, and then you're going to get to Jordan, and you're going to be able to cross over Jordan and come into the land of milk and honey. And so it's important for us to realize that the ark was in basically a very, very large tented structure that could be assembled and disassembled fairly easily and moved, and that led to the first of 2 great temples. That temple on top is the Temple of Solomon that was built on Temple Mount. Okay, important because the high priest, wearing the 12-stone ephod, which represents the 12 stones of the tribes of Israel, on top of that particular Ark of the Covenant that was placed in the Holy of Holies were 2 winged figures. We don't really know. Some say it's in a church in Aksum, Ethiopia, but the high priest is not letting anybody take any photos of it. So we don't know really if the Ark exists. Or it's in a federal warehouse, according to along with hundreds of other wooden crates, according to Indiana Jones at the very end. But this is what is called the mercy seat, and the mercy seat is where Yahweh or Jehovah would come down and occupy that particular part of the temple. The only person that was ever allowed to be in direct contact with Yahweh was the high priest. No one else saw Yahweh. But the disembodied eye, or the sacred eye, the all-seeing eye, it's even on our money. That's sort of important. And it has been a part of Judaism, and believe it or not, a part of animism for thousands and thousands of years. Another sacred place is a place called Mount Sinai, and at the base of Sinai is a very venerable monastery called St. Catherine's. And you'll just have to trust me. We're way, way up on Sinai. Look it down. This is a fairly large construction, and it just it's dwarfed by the size of the great granite mounts. And as the myth goes, if you believe it with a capital M, and if you don't with a small m, Moses goes up onto Sinai for many nights, and in a cleft in the rock, he finds a bush that is burning and is not consumed. Or I guess I should say consumed. Okay. He's asked to take his shoes off because he is on his sandals, he is on sacred ground. And eventually, God gives him the 10 Commandments, which is interesting. I had a student, I used to teach a class called Sacred Spaces of the World at UCCS, and one of my students said, you know, Moses by Michelangelo and San Pietro and Vincoli in Rome looks a lot like Charlton Heston. And I said, no, Charlton Heston and Paramount doing him up in terms of his makeup looks a lot like Moses. Okay. Now, as a note aside, the two horns on Moses that almost make him look like a Greco-Roman god or demigod were a misinterpretation of the text. Horns and rays of light is very, very close, and it was misunderstood during the Renaissance. So we know that this is Moses. He's got the tablets, because when he came down off of Sinai, likened to my hair 25 years ago, which was dark, it was white, okay? And he had light emanating out of the top of his head, okay? And, Charlton Heston, for a while there in the 50s and 60s, was just playing God all the time. Do you remember? Yeah. I mean, Ben-Hur was sort of following Christ. Moses is the first great superstar of the Old Testament in terms of prophets, no doubt. And so pilgrims today, thousands of years later, hike all the way up onto Sinai and down. It's become quite the eco-tourist sort of thing to do, especially to start with headlamps and to see the sunrise on Sinai. William Blake painted God as the great geometer here with the compasses at 90 degrees. Rembrandt painted God as a Jewish God, as an old rabbi. He actually got in trouble with the rabbi in Amsterdam for painting this painting. And so he sort of backed away and he said, but no, that's a Christian image of God. Not Rembrandt was a Jew. And he was obviously painting God from the Old Testament, not from the New Testament. And then a guy named Donato Bramante, who actually ended up designing the first rendition for Julius II of St. Peter's, illustrates God here. And do we see the sort of triangle, the right triangle behind the head of God? Mm-hmm. That's always a representation of God the Father. I thought I'd share this with you. This is called the flaming text, and it has little additions of flame, and to be read from right to left, and as it unwinds, and it is called the burning bush font of Judaism. So I'm showing again the burning bush, the bush that is not consumed. And we go into past the exterior into the interior of most synagogues. And remember, in Europe, 7/8 of them were destroyed, okay, before World War II and during World War II. This is a synagogue, believe it or not, in Prague that was left intact, okay? Wow. But it's always with the stars in the firmament of heaven, always recalling geometrically the grandeur and the mystery of Yahweh or Jehovah. That's the flaming figure, and to read it with two legs and a head and a great heart is absolutely correct. It's as close as Judaism gets to an anthropomorphic representation of God. And even this is still kind of abstract. Yahweh, and the infinity. And infinity is going to be throughout this presentation. Well, we have the Jerusalem Crusaders cross. We have the cross that we use, which is unadorned with the Christ dying and crucifixion. And then, of course, there's the Orthodox cross. which has that area for the INRI, and then the area where his feet were nailed, and this is at an angle to represent the pain of the passion. And this points to the good thief that will be with him in heaven, and this points downward to you know where for the bad thief. Okay. One of the defining moments in the history of Western art, and I only show you a segment of this particular altarpiece. It's called the Ghent altarpiece. It is in the Cathedral of St. Bavo in Ghent, Belgium. And it was painted by two brothers, mostly by Jean, but also by Hubert van Eyck. Okay? And it is God the Father, his mother, and St. John the Baptist, who points to him. I am not him, I am of the tree of Jesse, but he is at the end of the lineage. And we get closer to this figure, and he's a little ambiguous, this image of God, Christ. He's wearing black patent leather shoes. That lets us know he's God the Father. He's a young man. It's ambiguous. God is normally not shown this young. This would be Christ. But we know it's God because he has the papal tiara on, and I'll talk more about these three coronets in just a little while, but Van Eyck is hedging his bets, as it were, because he's painting both God the Father and God the Son, and the Holy Ghost is imbued, also implied. This triune business, I don't know about you guys, but this has never been an easy thing for people to understand. Comment?
So yeah, is it the mother of Elohim, who I don't know who that is, or the mother of Jesus?
It's the mother of Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah. The Virgin Mary, the Blessed Virgin.
Okay.
Absolutely.
When you said it was really God the Father, I have you going there.
Well, the other thing is, and I won't get into it, but she is shown in heaven with her son married and crowned, which is also a little ambiguous. Okay. Isn't this wonderful, though? I mean, Van Eyck just reaches out and grabs you the way he's painting emeralds and rubies and pearls. Everybody needs to go and see the Ghent altarpiece before you die. It's immense. It's really, really big. In the Orthodox tradition of Christianity, most particularly these two examples are on the island of Sicily. One is from a town called Cefalù, and the other is from a town called Monreale, which is above Palermo. These are immense images of God the Father, Christ, and in Greek he is referred to as the Pantocrator, Christ, King, God of the universe. So again, there's ambiguity here. Is this Jesus Christ? Well, it is, but it's also God at the same time. And I think in the West we have a hard time, well, shouldn't there be two of them rubbing elbows, Father and Son? No, in Orthodoxy they're combined into the same figure. And this is all 24 karat tesserae gold mosaic, which is gold that's applied to white marble. And then tens of thousands of these were applied by hand. To give you an idea, the head is about 12 feet across in Monreale. So this is a gigantic figure. How much gold? When my wife Ann and I were there, spot gold, there was $220 million worth of gold on the vaults in just Monreale. Okay, and it's probably twice that now, at $3,900 an ounce. Who's counting? Over 20 years ago, I was privileged to be asked by the local Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox priest to design their sanctuary, which is across the street from the American Furniture Warehouse. Okay, and it is called the Church of the Holy Theophany. Father Anthony Carbo and I, we had a love-hate relationship. We were knocking it back and forth. Mostly love, a little bit of hate. We built this whole sanctuary for less than $750,000, which at that time, with Fred Fleetmeyer, was a bit of a miracle. But this is the inside of it. because the outside architecturally that's tertiary to what this is all about. There's God the Father, the Pantocrator, on the underside of the dome there. God, Christ, King of the universe. And they really do have holy relics here that came all the way from Constantinople that are underneath the high altar. Okay. In the Vatican, it's the triune, God the Father, God the Son, and the dove, the Holy Ghost. And this divine axis is going all the way down to the monstrance, which is on the altar. And this is a painting, a fresco, by a guy named Raphael Sanzio. Raphael. And it is in the Stanza della Signatura. This is the same sort of buon fresco, or painting on wet grout, that Michelangelo was doing, where it literally becomes part of the wall structurally. What this is all about is the transubstantiation of the host. When does it become the body and the blood of Christ? And all of these popes and all these saints in heaven are arguing over the moment of transubstantiation. I remember a student of mine saying, I think the student actually was Jewish, that's kind of anal. Well, it's kind of important to Roman Catholicism in 1512. And of course, God the Father here is holding the Orbis Mundi, the world, the universe, and he has on the 90-degree bias, he has a square behind his head, which is the same mortar board that people wear when they graduate at college, okay? Now, some of them are octagonal. Some of them are hexagonal, believe it or not. But most oftentimes they're squares that normally aren't worn on the bias like this. They're worn straight on, okay? And you know what that means? A bachelor's degree was only given to people that were bachelors. They couldn't be married when they were going to college, okay? They could only get married after they received their baccalaureate. But they wore this to remind them that all knowledge was from God, okay? Now, kids these days don't wear it that way, but that's the tradition. We even have that tradition of God's face so bright with his Son that we may not see it. We shall not see it, is the way it's actually put. But in the case of Michelangelo, in the middle of the Cappella Sistina, the Sistine Chapel, God here, in the heavenly host behind him, are about to imbue Adam with life. Underneath his left elbow is Eve, who is looking very suspiciously at her future husband here, okay? And I think what's interesting here, God originally was painted in the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo as an ignudi. He was nude. And even Julius II, who was backing him, said, you know, Mike, there's a lot of cardinals that are kind of revved up about this. You're going to have to put a nightshirt on God, okay? So there's a lot of nudes and nudis in the Sistine Chapel ceiling, but God the Father is not one of them, okay? He's wearing a pink pajamas, okay? Nightshirt. So oftentimes we see what ostensibly looks like Jesus, but again, it's that ambiguous figure. It's young enough to be Jesus, but it's wearing the tiara of 3 crowns, which all stand for the earth. God is militant. God is penitent because of souls that are still in purgatory. And God is triumphant with the 3rd crown on top of the tiara, okay? And that orb, the way it looks, comes from Egypt. It was white, and it used to be the crown of Upper Egypt that was co-opted into Christianity. And so we see it here on the figure of the Ghent altarpiece, various tiaras. Popes wear them not to be God, but to represent God on earth. Christ's vicar on earth is the Pope. And the Pope's name is Magnum Great Bridge between God and his people, okay, which is kind of interesting. So again, 3 levels on the tiara of coronets that represent earth, purgatory, and heaven. And of course, there's a lot of wonderful tabernacles in the Christian tradition. This is sort of an unusual shot. This is a tabernacle in France that's on the Ile de la Cité. It's called the Sainte-Chapelle. And it's a royal chapel with stained glass, ladies and gentlemen, about 90 feet high. And it is a miracle of structural engineering of the Gothic, because now the wall has completely disappeared, and it's just, you're walking into a reliquary that's 90 feet high that's stained glass. Anyone here been to Sainte-Chapelle? Many hands going up. The center of Christendom, at least Roman Catholic Christendom, is in Rome, Vatican City State, and this is St. Peter's. Took 280 years to build, took 13 architects. It lived through 13 architects, if one can imagine. And here we are inside, looking at the Baldacchino, the great baldachin in bronze by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, up into the dome, designed by Michelangelo and Bramante, but Bramante doesn't live to see it completed, neither does Michelangelo. And these are not frescoes, ladies and gentlemen. All of this is 24 karat gold mosaic and semi-precious and precious stones, all the figures in the dome of St. Peter's. Islam. This is the holy symbol right there for Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah. When we say Alleluia, Alleluia is actually Latin, but Allahu, Akbar, God is great, is Muslim. Hopefully I'm not going to be saying anything politically incorrect in this recording. But sorry, all the Abrahamic religions worship the same God. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. There's a lot of misinformation going on that the hated Muslims are worshiping a God that's different than the Jews and the Christians. Nothing could be further from the truth. Yahweh, Allahu, and Allah are all the same Abrahamic God. Out of the bosom of Abraham, those 3 great religions. Okay. So this is the symbol right here that is venerated, but again, there's no image. There's no anthropomorphic image of Allah. These are these huge rondels. There's 4 of them inside the great Basilica of Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. It was called Santa Sophia because it was built as a Christian basilica under Justinian. It became an Ottoman mosque. Now it's a Christian basilica for Orthodoxy, for Roman Catholicism, for Sunni Islam, and it's also a state museum of Turkey, depending on what time of the week you're going to go and visit. Okay, this is the center, likened to iron filings all around the earth. The center of Islam is the Kaaba, K-A-B-A, which is in Mecca, and this is called the Masjid al-Haram, or the Great Sacred Mosque. Masjid is, in Muslim Arabic, mosque. M-O-S-Q-U-E is actually a French word. It's Masjid, M-A-S-J-I-D, is a better way of describing this kind of construction. If you're a Muslim in good standing, you try to make holy pilgrimage or Hajj at least once in your life to Mecca. And you are to circumambulate the Kaaba 7 times to complete Hajj. Okay. How many people are on Hajj during the holy time of the year? About 60 million people are between Mecca and Medina, or the Mosque of the Prophet, and in between. So it is a logistical nightmare trying to keep all those people watered and fed, and huge tent cities are set up for all of them. There are 3 great sites of Islam. One is the Grand Masjid in Mecca. The other is in Jerusalem. It is called the Kubat al-Shakara, which means the Dome of the Rock. And the Dome of the Rock is on Temple Mount, and it has been built and rebuilt. The Seljuk tile on the outside is from the 13th century. It was really built in about 720, the way we see it. And we're up inside the dome looking at this oblong rock right here, and it is the oblong rock of Abraham. Okay? Sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Here's why. This is one of the winning panels for the competition for the great doors on the baptistry in Florence by a guy named Lorenzo Ghiberti. If we look at this figure here, he has a knife. He's about to stick it in his son's neck. Abraham, Isaac, the angel of the Lord is staying his hand. He's testing the faith of Abraham. God says, you got to slay your son. Sorry. Just got to do it. And so at the moment that that's about to happen, and so why am I showing you this? That purportedly happened right here. Okay, on that holy stone. Okay. But also, right here, Muhammad, who's also, when he is shown, there was always a silk drape in front of his face. His face is never shown, okay? He is on his sacred horse, which happens to have a face that is of a human that seems like it's oriental to me. Just work with me here on this illustrated manuscript. He is flying from this rock into heaven. He flies into heaven on that horse. The name of the horse is Barack, just like our president, okay, Barack Obama, ex-president. And this is shown many, many times in Islamic scripts. So you can sort of see who owns the Dome of the Rock. The Jews on Temple Mount. We were here first. The Christians that came second. The Muslims that kicked the Christians' asses out. And then the Crusades, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Who owns the Holy Land? Who owns the holy city of Jerusalem? There's a lot of pockmarked AK-47 holes in limestone all over the place because the world court is not going to make that decision about a religious conviction. Okay. So here's symbols in calligraphy, gorgeous cursive, a little bit more organized here. This is also a way to display veneration of Allah in calligraphy. And so this is very important to Islam because its buildings are covered with calligraphy. They're covered with floreate designs and geometric designs. Just a year and a month ago, I was leading a group, art and architecture group, to Spain. One of the places we went was to the great Mezquita, or the Grand Mosque in Cordoba. Cordoba dates from the 8th century, and there's hundreds and hundreds of columns in there, all co-opted from Rome and the Visigoths. They were in a hurry to build this. They built a mosque that will hold 250,000 people in 5 years. Islam in Cordoba, the Umayyads. And we go closer, you're going to find the wall to pray towards in a mosque, which is called the Qibla. And in the Qibla, there's this sacred niche, in this case, this ogee-arched, gorgeous, this is all 24-karat gold set into a field of lapis lazuli, and then the reverse, and it's the incantation, there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his holy prophet. Over and over and over. So this is all sacred. The floreate business, the calligraphy, even the dome above it, this dome all set in lapis lazuli and 24-karat gold above, right as you're about to look into the niche of the mihrab, is a representation of Allah, the perfection of that which has no end, the great circle. And Muslims are the same as Orthodoxy. Earth is the square, circle is heaven, and where circle meets square is church, or masjid. Same in Christianity, Byzantine, early Christianity, Islam. We were also at privileged to be here. This is inside the Courtyard de Leones at the Alhambra. And this was built by the Nazarite sultans or kings in the 13th and 14th centuries. And there's two great sala or chambers here I want to share with you about the perfection of domes. Look at this, the Dos Hermanas. That has 10,000 muncarnas in there. They're like sacred stalactites. It seems impossible that it could be physically manifest and holding itself up. Dos Hermanas, the two sisters. And then how about this one, the 16-sided dome of the Sala of the Abencerrajes at the Alhambra. Okay. All representations metaphorically of Allah, the perfection of the dome. The great domes of both Istanbul and another town, which I think even has a more perfect masjid than in Istanbul. The town is Edirne, and the masjid is the masjid of Salim I, designed by the Michelangelo of the Muslim world, a guy named Koka Sinan in the 16th century. Look at this dome. This is the most perfect manifestation of centrally planned sacred space on the planet Earth. It's not Christian, it's Muslim. It's Ottoman Turkish. And it's immense. And if we get closer to this sacred dome, it keeps going through that incantation. Allahu Akbar. God is great. Allah is great. Muhammad is his sacred prophet. God is great. Over and over and over. It's their way of saying the rosary in sort of comparison to Roman Catholicism. Okay? And these are, look at these muncarnas, the blue tile masjids of Isfahan in Persia. We're about to enter into, look at this one, it's called the so-called pink mosque, because at the right time of day, a lot of the floriate design takes on this sort of pinkish hue. It's in the town of Shiraz. This one is in Isfahan. It's called the Masjid of the Shah, or the Masjid of the King. And look at the domes. This is the entrance dome. Here's the great dome. To give you scale, this is about 60 feet across. And it's all blue Isfahani tile. And this is called the Luftala. There are madrasas or mosques that are specifically for education, a Muslim university. This is called the Royal Peacock Dome, or Luftala, because all of the boches are supposed to recall the greatness of the peacock's feathers. But in this case, it still represents Allah. And Allah in terms of calligraphy, but also even the tile work in the Alhambra on the wainscoting of the wall, all this holy geometry, sacred geometry, is for us to recall the Godhead. Okay? So Hinduism, they're not shy about showing their gods and goddesses, okay? We'll get back to the Nataraja in just a second. But literally, outside of Mumbai, the old Bombay, there is an island called Elephanta, and there's a cave that's a man-hewn out of living rock cave. Everything you see is what's left over from really skilled carvers taking away the side of the mountain, okay? And there is this gigantic figure in a niche. It's called the Trimurti. There's 33 million gods and goddesses in in Hinduism. But there's three heavies. One is the creator, one's the preserver, and one's the destroyer. So in this particular case, we have Brahma, the creator, we have Vishnu, the preserver, and we have Shiva, the destroyer. All of these time cycles come in about 250,000 year packets, okay? So you need to relax, because your soul's going to get born and recycled again and again and again. Reincarnation. This is why if your car breaks down in India, they may get to it this week, they may not. You know, and if you're having a mini heart attack, they're going, what are you all revved up about? You know, you have tens of thousands of lives to live. So we are in the era of Shiva, and this, look at this. This is all carved ladies and gentlemen, are hewn out of the same piece of stone.
Wow.
Okay. Now look at this. Look at people here. This is a place called Elora, and there are 18 rock-hewn caves here. This is a freestanding temple that's almost 100 feet high and 280 feet long. It is a single piece of stone.
Wow.
Rashtrakuta dynasty, 757 to 780. This project took, well, let me put it this way. The rebuilding of the World Trade Center took half the time that these people took to carve this project. Okay? This happened pretty quick. No lacers, no theodolites. They started on high, and like termites into wood, they worked their way down so they didn't need scaffolding. Pretty ingenious. But these are a bunch of raghead idiots that wear diapers that know nothing, right? No. The Hindu Renaissance in the 7th, 8th, and 9th century was just as great as any Renaissance in Europe in the 14th and 15th and 16th centuries. And we're looking down at this. There's the Great Tower, the Sikara Tower, the Mahamandapa and the Mandapa. And these are all, there's all freestanding rooms, and inside of these are rooms with sculptures of Shiva and Parvati, okay, the male and female equivalent. This is all hewn out of one single piece of stone, okay. It is subtractive, not additive architecture. This is additive, block upon block upon block. From, this is the Kandaraya Mahadeva from the great Chandala dynasty, 10th to 11th century in North India. And look at this, it's literally carved with a profusion of figures. There's the great godhead, the Kandaraya Mahadeva in the Garbhagriha, the sacred room under that great tower. This is Shiva, male energy, Parvati, female energy, all carved in soapstone from the 12th century Hoysala dynasty from the south of India. Amazing. Holibid, Vellore, Somnathpur, temples like that. In the south, we get great entrances to temples, these gopuram that are 170, 180 feet high. This, you just have to trust me, it's covered with about 10,000 figures that all look, and there's the sacred of sacred, the Garbhagriha at the center of the complex. But even at the ends here, we see the Nayak, it's spreading both flood and fire. And there's the blue-figured Krishna. And look at this, 6 arms with different avatars. So many-armed and many-legged to show the power, the tantric multiplication of power in Hinduism. It's just a profusion of figures. There's Shiva. So we can liken his power to the great wall cloud of a tornado, or this is most recent over Jamaica. I mean, literally, this is the photo, the NASA photo of that level 5 storm that hit Jamaica. That's Shiva as far as Hindus are concerned. Can be very positive, but the destructive energy is immense. Man can't withstand it. Look at this home in Iowa burning. And look at this, I mean, you're not going to probably see that phenomenon very often with a fire. That's literally a firestorm. And as far as Hindus are concerned, the Nataraja, who dances the dance that ends time with his hair spinning, has 4 arms, 2 legs, crushes ignorance, Malukya, and atomic fire comes out of, you can go and see this one, which is Chola dynasty, single bronze casting in the Denver Art Museum. That's a 15 megaton explosion in the South Pacific, the Castle Bravo shot, okay? Which was a deliverable device by B-36, 15 megatons. This wasn't something that was set off on the ground, okay? But this is Shiva as far as Hindus are concerned, that immense energy. This right here is Hindi, or the ancient Sanskrit for the term Atman. So all of us have Atman. We all have souls individually, but we all have a collective soul that we belong to. So is it polytheistic? Yes and no. There's one great Atman, and then there's 33 million different versions, all at the same time. So to think of Hinduism as only polytheistic is the wrong way to think about it. It's polytheistic and monotheistic. Okay? Then there's Buddhism. The great wheels of Buddhism, at first, Buddha is not shown as the Buddha. He's represented metaphorically at Sanchi by this gigantic mound. The great mound at Sanchi, it's called the Anda. A-N-D-A means egg in Sanskrit. So that represents the body of the Buddha. And it is a stupa, but then all of a sudden in a place in the Central Ghats in central India, there are 1 through 26 caves. 5 of them are churches. The rest are all viharas or schools, but there are 5 churches that are called chaitya halls. There are more hamadryads in this jungle than you can shake a stick at. What's a hamadryad? A king cobra. So when you're walking around here, you don't go off the paths. Or if you do, your genetic code will not continue. You know what I mean? We saw a male and female when I was there on a study abroad trip with Ron Bernier, studying Indian art and architecture. We saw a male snake that was probably 13 feet long. And the guide wasn't concerned about the male, he was concerned about the female because he couldn't see the female. They travel together, they mate for life. They're considered gods and goddesses. So here's a chaitya hall at Ajanta. This is the great Gupta flowering renaissance of Central Indian Buddhism. And we go inside, this is all hewn from the same piece of rock, to a symbol now of the Buddha. And on top of it is that great Anda. And then one of the great frescoes, it's called the Bodhisattva of the Blue Lotus in cave number 1 at Ajanta. And this is when Buddha is still a Hindu prince called Siddhartha. Okay, he's about to go on his journey to seek the 4 noble truths and the Eightfold Path. Okay, so guess what? Everybody in this room, you might be Congregationalists, you might not be. You're all Bodhisattvas. You're all Buddhas to be. Even my wretched self. As to whether or not we'll get there this time out, it's up to us. The Bodhisattva of the Blue Lotus. And again, during that same time period, 5th to about 8th century AD, great flowering of representations of the Buddha. This is the great Buddha from Sarnath, and he's in the Dharma Chakra, or the Fear Not Mudra, which is spinning the great wheel right here, which is the wheel of contemplation. Okay, all suffering starts from wanting too much. To stop wanting too much and to stop suffering, you have to stop wanting too much. And eventually you can get to a thing in Boy Scouts. Our Eightfold Path was a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. How about that? 12 points of the Scout Law. Emblazoned into my mind forever. Some Buddhas look like Errol Flynn and have mustaches. That's because they come from Greece, from Alexander the Great, coming to Gandhara, to the north of India. And so Buddhas, instead of looking vaguely sort of Indo-Aryan, look a little bit different in the north of India. What's important, though, you don't pray to the Buddha, you pray with the Buddha. He is not Godhead. He represents the first manifestation. And look at this guy. This is on a river in China. If he were to stand up, he'd be 600 feet high. The great hewn, look at people walking up here. the great hewn out of the solid sandstone of the side of the hill, the great Buddha of Leshan, Leshan. Much bigger than the Statue of Liberty. Look at his head compared to people at the top level there. The great Buddha of Leshan. But he is our representative, and there have been hundreds of Buddhas. There's only one historic Buddha, Gautama. But there have been men and women that have found enlightenment. Okay? This is what's called the Great Emerald Buddha in Wat Phra Kaeo in Bangkok. It's actually not emerald, it's jade. But it's a huge piece of jade because that's a life-size figure. And then one of the largest wooden buildings in the world under one roof is in Nara at a place called Todaiji. It's called the Daibutsu. And inside the Daibutsu, we go closer to it, we find the Daibutsu Den. And this Buddha has epicanthic folds, looks suspiciously anthropologically like someone from Japan or China, right? So we create these images and likenesses of the Godhead and those that are enlightened in our own anthropomorphic image and likeness. This is huge, this figure of the Amida Buddha, Vairochana also. Here's Gautama with epicanthic folds, the Japanese head in bronze plates at a place called Kamakura. He's from about the end of the 13th to the beginning of the 14th century. How big? Seated, he's about 40 feet high. And we've all heard of Zen. There's a Zen garden that's particularly precious in Japan and for the world. It's at a place called Ryoonji. And can we pull that door? Both of them at the same time? There you go. Thanks, Ellen. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 islands of stones in a sea of gravel that's raked every day. And this is representing the Godhead, the cosmos. And people just sit here for hours, nothing is said. They're venerating this archipelago. Actually, these islands actually exist in the Sea of Japan, and they're exactly spaced that way, and they're exactly that size. They're just in miniature. Look at this. This Buddha, remember Sapporo was where the Winter Olympics were years and years ago? In northern Japan. This Buddha is at the center of a great cemetery, but they just didn't like him being out in the open. So they hired a guy named Tadao Ando to come and build this. And he builds this mound that you walk through to get to the Buddha. That's about 6 years old. Isn't that nice? At the end of his life, Buddha lays down and dies. This is the Parinirvana from Sri Lanka, Ceylon. And we see Parinirvanas around. Taoism, real quickly, I'll try to move along here. The yin and the yang, the great force of Qi, C-H-I. Qi is in everything. There are 5 sacred mountains to Taoism, and we see Taoist temples in the mountains. And think of Taoism this way. The mountains are the bones, the forests are the hair, and the rivers and streams are the blood. Everything has Qi. Everything is imbued with Qi. So Wo Shi is painting this Northern Sung Dynasty, 1000 AD or so. And you're going, well, the mountains can't possibly look like this. He's exaggerating. No, he is not exaggerating. Or Fan Quan, Travelers Amongst Mountains and Streams. This looks like, this couldn't possibly exist. Sure it can. Where are the travelers amongst mountains and streams? See all the animals here? See the monastery? It's lost in nature, isn't it? I mean, you can't even see it there. You can only see it if you get close. So this is Mount Gua. You're going to see something that's going to weird you out here. There are thousands of people waiting on the side of Mount Gua hooked in, lose about 10 people a year to make this sacred Taoist journey. And now these people are just at the top of the journey coming to the temple. Confucianism, just real briefly, the form of filial piety and sort of courtly religion and philosophy in China. That's the great temple in Peking, Beijing. Dragon worship, carvings of dragons in jade. Look at this bridge. This actually, and this escalator. Dragon after dragon after dragon. They have a form of something that's pretty exotic called Wan Yin, which is the female form of Buddha Hindu energy. Sometimes Wan Yin is male, sometimes, very often she's female. Look how many arms she has. And of course, the sacredness of Qi. Out of that grows Shintoism in Japan. Its major goddess or god is a goddess, Amaterasu Omi Kami. Kami means great spirit. This was the Japanese war flag, but it was before that. It was the flag of Shintoism. Everything's imbued. This is one of their sacred waterfalls, Nachi, and this Kami lives inside the waterfall. Okay? Everything is imbued with Kami, which is the same as Qi in Taoism. Mount Fuji, Fujiyama, has Qi. The Great Wave has Qi. The Torii Gate has Qi. And lots of people of all different kinds of religions are climbing Fujisan, Fujiyama, to watch the sunrise. The most sacred spot of Shintoism is Ise. Every 20 years they build an exact replica 1-to-1 of the temple at Ise out of Hinoki cypress. And these are the most perfect thatched roofs you'll ever see. Even the befuddled English can't figure out why and how the Japanese do thatch this well. So it's pretty new. Here it's still sort of orangish. And here are Shinto priests. You can see the new, and they're about to burn the old gray. They burn it right to the ground. And then what do? They start working on it. They clear it all away, and they start working on a 1-to-1 because they burn it about every 20 years. And they've been doing that for 1,800 years.
What's the logic?
Yeah, why?
It's religion.
That's a $64,000 question. I would think that the logic is that mankind pollutes the space, and so it needs to go to sacred fire and all the way down, purged. Even the rivers are sacred there. Even stones get married to each other in Shintoism. Even this great woven knot, okay, has Kami, or great spirit, at the entrance of the temple. The knot is as sacred as the building. Egyptian polytheism and ancient animism. Of course, we know Khufu, Khafre, and Menkure, the gods and goddesses of Egypt, Osiris, Amun-Re, the god king of the second of the great pyramids at Giza is a guy named Khafre, and he is guarded by Horus the falcon, this sculpture. And of course, maybe the greatest of all of them, because he lived so long and had so many children, was a guy named Ramesses II. This is his temple, and that's Lake Nasser. Abu Simbel, which is of course Muslim, not Egyptian. Valley of the Kings. This is maybe the greatest tomb in the Valley of the Kings. It's the tomb of Seti I. And here's Osiris, and there's Seti I in sacred discussion with Osiris in the tomb. This is all carved out of living rock as well. So this is the pharaoh will travel across the cosmos to the land of the dead. Even a minor king died when he was 18, 19. Tutankhamun is buried in one great face-covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 containers in his tomb.
Wow.
And this is that was on the upper part of the mummy, and that's the last. There's 3 inside there, mummies inside the great gold mummy. You can go and see this now in the GEM, the Grand Egyptian Museum outside of Cairo. It just opened. Soft opening was just this past weekend. We've all heard of petroglyphs. That's a pictograph. That's actually color that's put on the wall. I think these are the more interesting ones where the varnish of the wall is pecked away. This is a photograph I took with my wife and my sister-in-law at Saguaro National Park, the West Unit. Spirals are really important to animism. This, believe it or not, is outside of Dinosaur National Monument. This particular gods are carrying this great spiral. Isn't that a wonderful petroglyph? And then here's, of course, the biggest of the big, Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde. All of these round rooms here are called kivas. And if you go to Bandelier, you can hike up into the alcove kiva, and you can actually get inside of it. Pueblo Bonito also had kivas. Look at Antelope Canyon. Anyone here been to Antelope Canyon?
Where's that?
It's in Utah. You don't want to go, though, if there's storms. People have been swept away in here. Yeah. First, second, third Mesa, Black Mesa, the Hopi. And these are all Hopi Kachinas. Male and female energy of the Dane, which are the Navajo that come after the Hopi. And the glorious sand paintings of only a certain group of people are allowed to do sand paintings. And guess what? They're not sold to you and me. They're destroyed after they're completed. Okay? They only exist for a short time. And so whether it's Canyon de Chelly, Spider Rock, or many of us may have been here or driven by Shiprock, these spirits live up on these high places. So from Judaism and the mercy seat and the disfigured all-seeing eye to the great Pantocrators, this one's in the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., to the triune God, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, to the great domes, Floriate and Geometric, where Allah is only shown by geometry, to the bronzes of Hinduism, Shiva, to Buddhism, old and new. Don't you think this mound is wonderful? There by Tadel Hondo. To Taoism, which is again about the bones, the hair, and the blood being the mountains, the forests, and the rivers. Everything has chi, everything has kami in Shintoism. This building has kami, that workout center has kami, that volcano has kami, that General Sherman tree in Sequoia has kami. I mean, it's been alive for 3,700 years. It knows a lot of stuff we don't know. To just the sacredness of nature, this is 2004. I was out there with a dear friend of mine in college. This is the North Rim. This is at the edge of the Grand Canyon Lodge, which no longer exists. Burned down this year. And this is a little sketch I did from there, watercolor. To the individuality, this is the Palisades there. This is my favorite place. I feel the Godhead so strongly here. This is Zion National Park. Coming right before you go into the tunnel and poke out of the tunnel and then turn right north up into Zion Canyon. This is November of 2003. I'm freezing my butt off up there early in the morning. There's the Great White Throne and Angel's Landing. And did this. And if it looks real chuddery, and because I was shivering when I did this doggone thing, the Great White Throne. hey, the greatest physicist of the early part of the 20th century, mayhap the greatest physicist of the latter half, Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking, William Blake's great geometer, the Godhead to the Trimurti, and then we're at Gaia, Gaia, Mother Gaia, the Earth, and there, where do we go? Well, the closest solar system and stars are Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri, this red dwarf, which is right, you just have to trust me there, there's 3 stars. But they're a mere 4.5 million light years from here. The biggest one that looks like what we're in is Andromeda. That's 2 million light years away. 2 million. And we are part then of a cluster of galaxies and nebula that are creating stars, and stars being destroyed and created. And so for me it's the great explanation point, but I think maybe for most of it it's this. And I ran 3 minutes over, I apologize, but I'll just end there. Thanks. I know a lot of you are going to want to get to worship, but are there any questions or points or thoughts? There's going to be a test. So you might want to ask if you, yes.
Why Einstein and Hawking? I missed that. Why'd you put him up there?
Well, he's the greatest physicist of the early part of the 20th century. Hawking was working on what's called the centralization or the unification theory of the small and the large force of physics, electromagnetism, and propagation. And, you know, he did it mostly locked in a body that shouldn't have even been alive for the last 35, 40 years of his life.
I think she's asking why is it tied into this architecture and religion?
Well, I think that we get to a point, all of these, the manifestations where it's all on Earth, but Earth is just this little tiny marble, BB in the midst of everything. And are there a billion other Earths with carbon-based life like us?
Or perhaps they're all asking the same questions.
I think they are. We've been cutting each other's heads off for thousands of years over semantics, it would seem to me.
Still kind of doing it too.
Still kind of doing it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Sorry to race through this so quickly.
Hawking answered questions that Einstein couldn't answer.
No kidding.
It's true.
Is that,
True.
am I close?
Yeah, absolutely, but Hawking couldn't have asked the questions without
Einstein.
general and special relativity on the part of Einstein earlier.
Yeah, now this ties it all.
Actually,
together.
Einstein was real crappy at regular math. He couldn't add and subtract and multiply to save his life. But of course, he developed quantum mechanics, you know. So we're gonna give him that one. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
Like a whirlwind.
Yeah,
Excellent.
sorry we got started a little bit late.
Yeah, you had that going. Sorry.
But anyhow.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Wonderful time. You've covered
A lot.
a lot.
Actually, I used to teach this in a semester, sacred spaces
Yeah,
of the
I can
world.
imagine.
Did you have a cup?
Way down in the north, this piece in front of you. I know that you can only do so much, you did so well. But there is Hagia Sophia.
There was something around there. I don't know.
6th century, they just came.
Yeah, yeah. 542 to 537.
Yep. The next 500 years, they had all this. But I find how that influenced the design purposely of St. Peter's.
Well, and also,
There's a
of all
little,
the,
mine is bigger than yours.
well, and also all the Ottoman mosques that Koga Sinai designs, or Suleiman and Salim, they're all based on Hagia Sophia. That's the model. This great young space.
I count my blessings, I lived 2 years